Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody online. Hello, Eduardo, are you able to hear me? Can you unmute yourself and test? Hi, Eduardo.
Can you hear me, Alex? Alex?
Yes, Eduardo, we can. You know what? We're not IT experts here, so we're doing a lot of crazy things with technology, but we can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm here.
Okay. Okay, so let's get started. So I do appreciate everyone joining us. Just so everyone knows, we have, I believe that number is 11 online. So it's a okay turnout. And hopefully we can encourage more people in the Regent Park community to continue to be involved in this conversation. We have engaged with a number of individuals from the Regent Park community frequently, Waleed, Marlene, for an example, as well as Ibrahim, who was unable to make it, and also Pavitra, who I believe is online, and Rabia, who will join us, all of which will share a couple of remarks. But what we want to do with this conversation, Hilda, can you close the participants tab, please? So what we wanted to do with this meeting today here was share with you our plan, what we want to do and if you're having trouble hearing, just say something in chat and my colleague Ilda will say something. Ilda, just monitor the chat and if they're having trouble hearing, just make sure. Okay, so what we wanted to do with today's conversation was to present what we want to do in collaboration with the Regent Park community. We've had a number of different conversations over the last 2 years, conceptualizing what we would like to do with the community. Is that you, Eduardo? It's okay. Okay. So what we want to do, and so I'll take us through the presentation here, and we can show you what we want to do. But we are looking for your feedback here today, both online and in person as well. So again, we're here, and our title of the concept is Regent Park, Past, Present, Future, and we're looking at our collaboration next steps with the Regent Park community. And we are here at the Wellern Pavilion in Regent Park. So can we go to the next slide, please, Hilda? So again, just some people are newer to the pavilion here, so I will explain a little bit about what we are. So our mission is, we are a collaboration between the Government of Canada, United Nations, as well as the Daniels Corporation, us, Urban Economy Forum, and as well as the community, right? We are focused at the local level and connecting that to the global level and working with other governments. The Wellern Pavilion is a global platform to inspire action and advocate for the urban SDGs with urban stakeholders. Importantly, we use urban data to support evidence-based policy decision-making and action priorities. And finally, we are supported by people-oriented, innovative solutions towards realizing the Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide, please. So our vision. We are people-centered, sustainable cities that are planned through data, driven by innovation, and informed by the Sustainable Development Goals. How do we do this? There's a number of different actions that we look at. The Pavilion is an urban knowledge exchange hub, a platform that facilitates sustainability, robust evolving space for city needs, global urban network. We're looking at best practices for urbanization, and as well as we're a space for change makers in urban change, such as many of you here today. And importantly, it's a space for public participation. How can we use the Pavilion to elevate community voices, to advocate for what their needs are, their priorities? So let's move to the next slide, please. So just as a kind of a reminder, some of you may or may not know, we did have the Pavilion's grand opening on April 21, 2022. This was really where we just started motoring forward with our agenda and our platform, our programs. Next slide, please. So, it's been 230 plus days, give or take, 5 days or something like that. And we've been making progress quite quickly in terms of what we've been doing. Partnerships with Canadian urban institutions, specifically focusing on the 100+ program, and I'll explain that a little bit later on. We're growing a network of networks in Canada and globally, and locally here as well. That's the purpose of this meeting. We're connecting with foreign cities and countries through the International Board, which is one of the governing bodies of the pavilion, as well as the steering committee, and Marlene will talk a little bit about that later on. We do have physical exhibitions in collaboration with the University of Toronto. The first one was held previously, which is now taken down, and we'll have our next one on January 20th, focusing on the missing middle. And then you also see here, Regent Park has their footprint as well, in a form of an exhibition as well. We've announced the Canada Frontrunner program, which is one of our major programs that we announced on October 4th, in collaboration with the Government of Canada. Minister of Housing joined us for that meeting, as well as CMHC. We also are looking at SCG Cities Global Hub, which is working to leave nobody behind. This is a UN Habitat flagship program. We won't go into too much detail about this, but this is another one of the pavilion's initiatives. We also are working with Harvard University, who's provided us with the framework for how the pavilion will operate online as well. And of course, the pavilion hosted the 4th Urban Economy Forum. Next slide, please, Ilda. So just to show an example of some of the collaborations that we've had here in the pavilion. We've had a number of different meetings. We've looked at accessibility. We had a session earlier today about accessibility. There was a second session looking at the building codes and how buildings, and not only buildings, but public spaces can be more inclusive of our people, of our societies. We've had, Urban Economy Forum 4 was here. We've had community gatherings. Waleed organized an event on food security. We've had a panel with the Regent Park community. Ministers have joined us many times. Anyways, my point of this slide is that we've had a number of different activities that look at sustainable urbanization and inclusive communities, and how we can engage with the globe as well. Next slide, please. So looking at, you can't see the title of the slides there, but importantly, we're looking at, when we're framing the collaboration with the community, we're looking at a couple of different components here. So what are the priorities and areas of collaboration? And of course, you have your Regent Park Social Development Plan. I believe it was refreshed in 2019. Yeah, so from that plan, you're looking at safety, employment and economic development, community building and communication. And our role, what we want to do here with our programming, is connect to Regent Park's priorities and really synergize with what you recognize as your priorities and bring it to the pavilion, and how the pavilion can also support you as well. So as I had mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, for the last 1.5 years, 2 years, the pavilion has also been engaging in dialogue with the community, but also internally about how we want to, contribute and participate, and how we feel we can best add value to what you're doing here. And what we're doing, right? So looking at, the Regent Park community, and as well as your member story, looking at urban regenerations and lessons, that's part of that kind of past and present, and that future, and telling that story as well. We're looking at local community engagement in the pavilion, how we can tell your story at the pavilion to the local community, or to the global communities, and really connecting with other communities around the globe as well. Advocating community voices. I mean, that kind of connects to Regent Park Social Development Plan. How can we raise your voices at the city level, at the provincial level, at the federal level, etc. Community leadership and empowerment. How can we, give the community opportunities, empower the community, to use the space to tell, things like, what Waleed has talked about food insecurity, and how you can leverage the pavilion for your benefits, looking at programming for women, children, and youth programs, and then as well as the ambassador program, which is been discussed as, through tours and such like that. So a number of different kind of concrete actions that we feel our programming hopes to address through the priorities and areas of alignment. If you can go to the next slide, please, Hilda. Just to kind of reference the past community engagements that we've had, we've had a number of different pavilion steering committees, which is part of our governance structure. Marlene is on the steering committee, as well as Ibrahim Afra, who I'm sure many of you are aware of. So we've had 17 meetings, and of course, these meetings are not just about local community kind of priorities, but it is very much about pavilion strategic planning. We have project management committee meetings that look at a number of different areas, including how we want to engage the Regent Park community. We've had a number of different one-on-one meetings with the local community as well to discuss how we want to move forward and get input from some of our close confidants, suppose you could say. Involvement in international events like Urban Economy Forum 4, Regent Park community meetings, like I had mentioned previously. Of course, I believe the Regent Park community has local committees set up in terms of discussing how you can collaborate with the Regent Park, the World Urban Pavilion, looking at pavilion exhibitions and how can we involve the Regent Park further, specifically with the University of Toronto, looking at some of these conversations about mixed use buildings and how we can relay that story a little bit more. And then, of course, the Regent Park tours, which are also, valuable to us to continue to engage our global audience and bring it to the local level. Next slide, please. So what we have here is, this is our proposal, and I wish you could see the title here. Is it possible to get rid of that thing there? It's okay, don't worry about it. I don't want to lose the slide we're on. So this is our proposal to introduce Regent Park as an SDG global neighborhood. That's the concept that we're proposing our collaboration under. And we framed it under kind of telling the story of Regent Park. So we're looking at Regent Park's past and present, and we're also looking at Regent Park's future. And both these areas align quite well with two of our programming areas. And the first one being 100+ Canada's profile in urban SDGs. So what we're looking for, and I put here made in Regent Park, but what we're looking for is made in Canada urban innovations and transformations. And I think the way we frame Regent Park's past and present is made in Regent Park urban innovations and transformations. I believe there's a number of different initiatives that civil society organizations are doing, that committees are leading, ground up approaches that I believe we could put forward as part of this 100+. And this really meant, don't worry about it, Ilda. And what 100+ aims to do is to really build Canada's profile of these urban innovations. So looking at urban regeneration and experience through joint events, showcasing Regent Park inspiring practices, engaging in thematic events, looking at inclusion, looking at accessibility, etc., and then sharing lessons learned with other communities. When we look at Regent Park's future, I believe we can frame that under Canada Frontrunner of Urban SDGs, which aims to bring together all of Canadian urban society under one kind of shared vision for sustainable development. We're looking at bringing in, cities, towns, communities, universities, developers, the federal government, provincial governments, the list goes on, and frame it each as kind of a frontrunner city, frontrunner town, etc. And this is where I think the framing of Regent Park is what we would like to do, is frame Regent Park as that frontrunner communities, looking at principles of, if you can go back, Hilda, I think you need to hit the arrow. So looking at urban innovations and I need my arrow there. There we go. Sorry about that. So what we're looking at is principles of urban regeneration, and how can we collaborate with you and Habitat in that regard. They're technical advisors, etc. And they could really provide that technical capacity, support us through the urban monitoring framework, for an example, as well. Again, looking at Regent Park priorities and advocating community voices. And then, of course, looking at pilot projects. What are Regent Park priorities, and how can we further advance these through pilot projects? Next slide, please. I'm almost done here, I swear. So I've touched on some of these things already, but again, just looking at Canada Frontrunner of Urban SDGs, we're bringing urban and community partners, Canadian urban actors together. We're demonstrating how communities can be transformational forces for national agendas and the SDGs through you and Habitat's SDG Stays initiative, advocating Regent Park priorities through global pilot, and localizing the SDGs. And then the 100+ Canada's profile in urban SDGs, we're recognizing and showcasing and demonstrating Canada's commitment to more inclusive and sustainable urban practices, and looking at made in Regent Park urban innovations and transformations and sustainable urban development. I've touched on these topics already, but just to reiterate. So let's bring the world experiences to Regent Park and share Regent Park's lessons globally. This is what we want to do, looking at community empowerment, equity agendas, climate change, economic development, and really position Regent Park as that frontrunner initiative. So next slide, please. And let's advocate Regent Park as an urban SDG global neighborhood. This is our proposal, looking at Regent Park's past and present, and also looking at Regent Park's future and bringing international communities to the stage. So kind of what we believe our next steps are and what we want to hear from you. And I'll turn to some of my colleagues right after this. And I apologize, Reza, I told you that you're going to open us here and I went right to it. But what initiatives exist in Regent Park community that we can bring to 100 plus Canada's urban profile, urban SDGs? We want to hear from you. What is Regent Park doing well? What can we bring to this platform? What are Regent Park community priorities to consider for global pilot projects? We see this in Regent Park's social development plan. Let's bring these to the global pilot projects and create something real. And then finally, support the notion of Regent Park as an SDG neighborhood. Next slide. So that's the conclusion of that. So what I'll do here is perhaps, Reza, you want to go to Eduardo? So let's go to Eduardo here, and I'm going to turn to you, Eduardo, if you want to just share some general remarks with us.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, Alex and colleagues?
Yes.
Hello? Yes. Okay, thank you. Well, let me first say that I'm very pleased that we are doing this work with Regent Park, that not only physically there in the pavilion, but also creating institutional, social, cultural conditions to work together on this. I heard in detail your presentation, Alex. I think it's very well structured. I think it's very clear the objective and the messages. So my comments, 2 or 3, are to enrich, by no means to contest, because I believe what you presented, in my view, is good enough. The first one on the vision, I would try to connect to the work of the UN that I was working with and to the global agendas, and to say that perhaps what we need to do with Regent Park is to enrich the neighborhood concept in general, which means thinking how neighborhoods can contribute from ecological, from sustainable, from community-based principles to articulate responses at the global level agenda. It is there, it is clearly there, but I think this notion of neighborhood, which is Regent Park, in my view, should be explored further. Second point that is also there, but I believe we could also enrich, it's, I like a lot the model of the Regent Park, as we have the model of Canada. I would try to articulate 2 things, Alex and colleagues. The first one is how clearly Regent Park contributes at 2 levels with the global agendas and with the SDGs. And for that, something that perhaps is missing, and I know you have enough information to integrate, is which are the indicators of Regent Park in the past, in the present, and which could be in the future, in order as the SDGs to define targets. How Regent Park can define targets on some of the indicators of the Goal 11 and others for change at the local level. And we can demonstrate that change at the local level can restructure the governance mechanism to bring it to highest level of the communities and the cities. In other words, to really integrate in your proposal, Alex, data and knowledge as a way of proving beyond the anecdotal and beyond the community work, which of course is very important in the story that you are mentioning, but also on the need to say what we have changed in terms of impact and indicators. And we are able to prove this we will be able to prove that Regent Park can represent, and I'm not exaggerating, can represent a model or a new model of neighborhood participation, of community participation, articulated to the pavilion agenda. And is Regent Park changing inequalities? Is Regent Park, even at the own space, is Regent Park creating programs and actions of climate change or health conditions? A word that is missing and is very important is the health of the post-COVID or the living with pandemics agenda. I didn't hear this, and this is not over. And it's important to think that Regent Park can be a unit of restructuring in a governance perspective, the responses to future health threats and positive health conditions. In my view, that will be also very important. And the last one, which that you also mentioned, but I would like to stress, is which of the SDGs we can privilege in Regent Park. In other words, can we do an exercise of rethinking proximity, rethinking densities, rethinking mobility factors, and to articulate this public space and others that we can use to prove again that these local units of response at this regeneration level are what we need at the global level. Those are my preliminary comments, Alex and colleagues.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eduardo, for that feedback. It's always very valuable to us. I would like to turn to some of our other colleagues just to give their first remarks. Reza, did you want to? Yeah, later. Okay. So I'll turn to perhaps Waleed. Yeah. I have you later in the agenda, but I'll put you up now.
That's good. I hope everyone can hear me online. My name is Waleed Kogali Ali, and I'm one of the co-chairs, resident co-chairs of the Community Building Working Group. I see Rabia around. I know she is in the room. So that's my other fellow resident co-chair. So Rabia, hope you can hear me. I'm also with the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. I'm on the board, and I see my friend Marlene DeGenova, who's our co-chair and is also the co-chair of the stakeholders table. So Marlene, thank you so much for being here. Also see Pavitra, amazing Regent Park Neighborhood coordinator as well. And I see Miguel as well, a board member. So thank you, Miguel. And I'm very, very happy about tonight's meeting and the proposal that's been put forward for Regent Park being a community, a global community that could actually be a foundation, not just for other communities across Toronto, across Canada, but internationally, right? And I want to reflect on some of the comments that Eduardo said earlier. You talked about how Regent Park could be an example of a resilient community, especially when it pertains to redressing the ongoing health threats, the international global health threats like we experienced with this global pandemic. And we've illustrated those examples of residents coming together, right, through mutual aid work, but most importantly, to respond in times of crisis, to support their neighbors. And then, we have a foundation for that we want to share with the world. But one amazing opportunity that exists today is through the evaluations and benchmark work that we do at the Social Development Plan. Right now, we're trying to come up with indicators that will help us track our progress when it comes to the revitalization of Regent Park. So specifically, indicators that help us track simple things like, are residents happy, right? Are residents feeling safe in that community? These are indicators that are informed by the global monitoring framework that the World Urban Pavilion and our partners can help us better articulate at the community level through the leadership of residents, through the insight of the leadership of the Social Development Plan right here in Regent Park. So that's one amazing opportunity that exists to help us come up with a community framework that will help us track those amazing indicators so that Regent Park can tell its story not just in Toronto, across Canada, around the world, right? Wouldn't you want to tell that story? Yes, I'm hoping. That's one important thing. The other important opportunity is it comes to the SDGs and the learnings of the implementation of SDGs in our sister cities, right? I think it'll be an important opportunity for us to exchange and share best practices so that we have a better understanding of how we could better implement the SDGs in our cities, but better yet, how does that look like in our communities, right? So I wanted to make those specific comments with regards to this amazing collaboration that we're going to start, or we've already started. The one thing that I want to quickly reflect on is the challenge that Regent Park is facing. Regent Park's biggest challenge right now is the lack of coordination between our levels of government, and most importantly, centering the needs of our community. And we're hoping that in phases 4 and 5, that we could change this dynamic, that we could have all levels of government sit at the table, especially when it pertains to funding, right? Regent Park is actually a priority, not just for the city of Toronto or TCHC or Tridel or the community, but all levels of government. We're all invested in making it work, right? So that's one important challenge that we need to address. And the other challenge is to make sure that we change the culture. We change the culture in the way community development happens in our community. So it's community-led, it's co-created with residents. It's focused on the needs of our neighbors so that when 15 years, 20 years passes by, passes by real quick, we're gonna reflect back on the investments made and the solutions that were created. And if it's not centered on the people that live in our community, then we'll have failed, right? So that's another challenge that I hope we could all address collectively as residents, as stakeholders, and also with the support and funding of all levels of government, not just the political support, but also that money. We need that money to make things happen. So just gonna sum it up that way. And thank you so much, Alex, for the invitation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Waleed. And of course, I think Waleed and I, at least for the pavilion, are on the same page, and we do hope that we continue to gain more support as well from our other partners. Perhaps Marlene, yeah?
Okay. Not quite prepared, but
That's fine. Yeah, just share your experiences. Yeah, of course.
Okay, no, I didn't expect to speak tonight, so here goes. I'm Marlene DeGeneva. I'm the co-chair for the RPNA, which is the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, and also for the Social Development Plan Stakeholders Table, and a number of other things. And as a lot of people in Regent Park, I'm involved in a lot of things. This is a community that involves itself. And I am incredibly privileged to be involved in the pavilion and to be on that, okay, what's it called? The steering committee, okay? It's amazingly interesting. I'm learning things that I haven't known before. I've never read so many books in this past year on urban development. I feel like I know quite a lot right now about urban development. But our reason for being here, and Ibrahim and myself weren't sure what we were going to do and why we wanted to be here, except to make sure that the voice of the community was heard. For decades, there have been stories about Regent Park. If we're going to be here, we want to make sure that the stories that you tell about Regent Park are true. If we're going to talk about revitalization, make sure the stories you tell about revitalization are true from the perspective of the people who live here. And it's not just Ibrahim and myself. We bring those stories from our community members, okay? Not everything in revitalization goes well. There have been amazing things happen here, things that we are so proud of. But if this is to be a teaching platform, if other communities and other places in the world are going to learn from us, they need to know the truth. because you learn from those things. Not to point fingers, but to say, this is what went wrong. These were the roadblocks. How do we fix that? Okay. And I think that's the way we move forward. This is my personal feeling, and I will speak about this ad nauseum. I think until we have true participatory decision-making in neighborhoods like ours, I think any decision, I think it is the only way you're going to get real sounds from the people, that you're going to get exactly what you want. Because too many people have come to our community and said, we know what you need. And it doesn't matter how much consultation you do, because consultation can be moved and changed and interpreted into anything you want. But until you have participatory decision-making, where you have equal numbers at that table, do you really hear what real individuals want? So a focus of ours has been, you can have all the theories in the world, and the theories are fascinating, but you better bring those theories right down to the ground level, because this is where we live. And so there has to be buy-in, not just the builder and the people who own the land, but the people who are actually doing the work, and the city planners, the bureaucrats who can get in your way. Okay, I'm just all the time. Everybody has to understand that this becomes a norm, and we're all talking about the same thing. People matter, their lives matter. And when everybody goes away, we're still there picking up the pieces if you don't do it right. So I am delighted that we're part of this. We're learning. We hope we're bringing something to help others, and see what happens. But this is a wonderful facility, and thank you very much for letting me speak.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Marlene. And as I always say, keeping us grounded in the community. Perhaps, Peter, would you like to follow that? Yeah. Okay.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say those are tough, unscripted remarks to follow. And also, and Waleed, I also thank you for your comments. I know quite often we find ourselves having collegial disagreements in meetings together, but I had to say that I was listening to your remarks and thinking, this is exactly right. This is exactly where we need to be. And I really deeply appreciate what you had to say. So thank you very much. So by the way, that's my introduction. My name is Peter Zimmerman. I'm the Senior Director in the Development Division at Toronto Community Housing. And I'm responsible for Regent Park revitalization. So I don't say I lead it. I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm riding a horse, and I think I'm in control of the horse, but I realize the horse is really galloping down this path, and I'm pretending to steer it sometimes. So that said, I think what I'd like to say is talk a little bit about what we're trying to achieve, particularly in the revisioning of phases 4 and 5 of Regent Park, the last 16 acres along Gerrard Street. And we, as many of you know, we're in the middle of a large rezoning exercise for that part of Regent Park. And the goal there is there are numerous goals. One is to create more opportunities for affordable housing. That's the primary goal. That's why we're upzoning the site. The other goal is to create spaces for new community services and programs, and creating opportunities for spaces that can be controlled and run by residents once those spaces are built. The other thing we're thinking quite a bit about is the economics of it all. How do we make it work? How do we create a sustainable community from an economic perspective, an environmental perspective, and a social perspective. So the spaces are important. Getting the economics of the development right are important. We're trying to figure out how we can build a model where those community spaces have some legacy funding associated with them, so that when we turn them over to the community, there are opportunities for those spaces to have like a 25-year runway to become successful. So those are the types of things we've been thinking about as we're formulating the economic components of the plan. The big activity that we're going to be involved with in 2023, we're going to be completing the rezoning exercise. We're going to be working on a sustainability plan. So how do we move away from a carbon-based energy system? We have a large investment in a district energy plant, which is run off of natural gas. We can't use natural gas under Toronto Green standards moving forward with our new buildings. So we have to think of an alternative approach to designing our buildings and to fueling those buildings. We have to develop the remarks around figuring out how to get the governments to work together to provide the funding that we need to make all of that new affordable housing work and be deeply affordable is really critical. We're thinking a lot about the market components of the project. So one of the conversations that we're having is, how do we move amenity spaces out of condominium buildings and move them into central locations, have the condominium fees support amenity spaces that are for everybody in the community and creating opportunities for social interaction. These are just ideas right now. And what we're trying to do over the next 12 months or so is to put some flesh on the bones and to work very closely with the community to make sure that we've got it right. And as we set up that model, as we deliver those spaces, they really are meeting the needs of the community. So I really welcome opportunities to talk a little bit about what we're doing. I want to continue to be involved in this process and to be available to the community for any kind of ongoing communication and feedback as we move our way through the process. So anyway, I think that's it to start. We'll just turn it over then. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. So yes, as you heard from Peter, a number of perhaps innovations that we can even frame under Canada Frontrunner and work all together in that regard. So that was Peter Zimmerman from Toronto Community Housing, and I apologize, Peter, I didn't introduce you. We have also Pavitra from Regent Park Neighborhood Association. Do you want to share any remarks at all, Pavitra? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
The last one. Because we were like back-to-back meetings today. So, okay. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm Pavitra. I am the RPNA coordinator. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this wonderful collaboration. And so as you all know, UEF, it is a great platform where you people have created a global knowledge hub, and you've been like collaborating and engaging with Regent Park community, like in various ways, like engaging with residents, with agencies, and that's really something great that you are integrating yourself into the community. So it's a learning curve for both of them. And I'm excited for this new collaboration of Regent Park's past, present, and future, as it plays a vital role for the development of Regent Park through the current revitalization of phases 4 and 5. And Regent Park asked to this is like a great platform. This is a great opportunity that we should make use of this global knowledge hub of making aware of, the world, like how this model is working. And maybe we can also learn from some other community. Something is happening, or maybe we're not aware. So this kind of knowledge exchange is really great. And I'm happy that you guys are providing that platform for Regent Park. And in terms of, yeah, the international community and like establishing it as an SDG neighborhood, because the future is all about sustainability. How are we going to sustain, like in terms of social, cultural, economic, because that is what provides a foundation for future growth. Because now with all the global warming and everything, like natural resources are like slowly depreciating. So like as Peter mentioned, like how you are changing the building construction. So sustainability matters, and you guys are providing that platform. And I think Regent Park, we should like make use of the international collaboration, and we should build that international hub and make use of it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Kavita. And we have a few more speakers left. Rabia, would you like to share some remarks? So Rabia is Regent Park Community Leader and also the co-chair of Community Building Table Regent Park Social Development Plan Working Group. Did I get that right? Okay, perfect.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here presenting and sharing some experience. Thanks, Alex and Elda, Fadila, Rida, everyone here. As a team, you have been doing really wonderful job bringing the community together, listening to us and giving us a chance to present and share our own experience with, around the world with other in different culture as well and countries. So Walid, Marlene, Bavitra, and Peter as well. So you have all said wonderful. What you have said, I don't think you left something for me to say, but I want to just emphasize on something very important, especially one of the goals with sustainability development goals, goal number 11, I guess, which is sustainable cities, where it's emphasized on four things, or four aims, which is safe, inclusive and safe, resilient, and sustainable cities. So I felt that for a Regent Park, maybe, yeah, we feel safe, at least the last 10 years where the development started and people start to feel safe to walk on the street. This is, I can't speak for the history, and there are other people past their experience where it wasn't safe to even to take a taxi and come to this community. So safety may be something that developed over time, but I guess maybe inclusivity is very important. And people here with this mixed income, I would say it's not anymore Toronto community housing, not anymore people live in poverty. Now we have seen those wonderful buildings and people, I live in one of those condos. So I'm speaking in my own experience where I see those, all of those income, not even low, just start from middle to high. So when you go to that parking, you would see those all fancy cars and you can tell from that. So even being myself a co-chair of community building, I see that there is a gap between people who live in those, including myself, even though I rent, I don't own, where I'm stuck in this. We just had a chat earlier. So, and I mean, it's very hard to see how you can bring those people together. Someone is working from 9 to 5 and then coming home to relax. Someone else from 9 to 5 is a free and then 5 to get the kids and get or 3 after 3. So looking at that, we need to be more mindful of that. How can we create occasions and events to bring people? And speaking of occasions and events, access to space. Yeah, wonderful revitalizations, but as community, when I want access to a space, I can't. You go to the city of Toronto or community housing, they will give you a hard time, 8 months. I have been waiting for a program to run. It's a free program for the community. 8 months I have been waiting. 8 months, supposed to start March. And look, we are now. And supposed to be for April, for September, for school year. And we are in November. We are hitting December, actually. There is nothing happened yet. People are, asking me, where is it? We're excited. It's not me. I wish I have a big house. I can have all of you together in it, but it doesn't work like that. So access to space is very, very crisis in Regent Park. If you want to run a program, if you want to have, bring people together, building a community, it's hard. You go to the city, they will, until you need a year at least. For access something for next year, winter, you have to speak fall. You have to talk about that from now. We have that conversation, back and forth, back and forth. So running programs, initiatives, anything that would bring people together, you will feel, you will see, you will have many, many barriers. Why we need to have that? Why this community or those beautiful buildings built for? Isn't it to give people access? So they come together and they share, especially after 2 years of being in lockdown, it's people really need to be in person. So bringing people together, it's access to space, it's a big barrier. And something else I want to share, that people overhoused. And we had that conversation from last night. So for rezoning meeting. So it was a big theme came up. People want to have access to affordable housing, and people have to home ownership. Maybe that would be different, but the majority of people have been asking about affordable housing. So you give me an option, or it seems like you were sharing with me it was a good news, and I understand that, and I respect that. Good news, more affordable units are coming, but that will create a solution or create a problem. So for us as a community, I'm a community advocate, and those are my neighbors. They see me everywhere with my 4 children. I try to do my best to advocate and speak for this community, but where I am in this, I am over, really, I live in a very small place. And it's really expensive. So why I do not have access to those affordable housing? And instead of bringing someone outside, moving in, and do not even know about the community and asking me to leave. Does this feel like fair? So I guess we need to create more options, like really looking at someone like myself living 8 years, and this is the at least. You will see many residents here, they face the same barrier where they have been asked to leave. No, this is my home. I moved from Libya to here. I built another country. I built another, culture, it's my home, and no one can ask me to leave because here is where I belong. So, I mean, it's really like they are looking at as a number. It's really makes me frustrated. You are a family, you have to live somewhere. No, I belong to here and I want to live here. So making this doesn't belong to those 17 goals from sustainability. Asking someone to pull it from the roots and build it somewhere, maybe I will die, and I'm a planet. So maybe, my kids, they can survive. Speaking for my kids, we need to see more opportunities for children. So my son, who's 10 years now, he's aiming to be a famous soccer player in the next 10 years. Does he have any support now? Or we should, as a family, move for him to get another support? So it's all about, making it inclusive. Seniors, where are seniors from here? Like all of our conversation. Have anyone thought about seniors? Like more is there? We need gym for seniors. Have anyone thought about safe gym they can go and we have someone to take care of them, and look at like many other policies where they need insurance and things. So we need to have a space for them. We need to have where they can gather a safe space. So many other people we need to look at inclusivity is very important. Wanna sum up this, and thanks for having me, and thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Rabia, and that generally is coming to our closing here. And then before we open it to discussion, I will say that what I think is important about our conversation, and forgive the online audience here, we have a fire truck outside, but what I think is important about our conversation here is how we are kind of packaging, all these different concepts, these different ideas, and how we can move forward collaboratively. We have our ideas at the World Urban Pavilion, and of course we can't do this without the community. We need the community. We need organizations like Toronto Community Housing. We need CMHC. We need the Daniels Corporation. We need Trident. We all need to be part of this conversation to move forward and really introduce Regent Park as a global SDG neighborhood. And I think that this can be, something for the globe. We had Marlene share about principles, how we need to think. We've heard experiences from Pavitra and Rabia, Waleed's kind of visionary thinking about, using data, etc. So I think all of these are very valuable. And of course, it's also valuable to hear from other people of the Regent Park community. Before I turn over to the discussion, Reza, do you want to wrap up? Yeah? Say any final remarks, and then we'll move to discussion, yeah?
Thank you so much to join us in this conversation. I think it's really important to start briefing about Wilderband Pavilion, working with the community. We already started. We have different initiatives, and we had conversation with all of the organizations. They are involved about the Regent Park. In one level, we try to work as a Wilderband Pavilion, work with international, with other countries, with UN Habitat. I work with some of the international entity, with Eduardo regarding best practice and local leadership. I believe we have lots of great experience that we can share together. Good practice, best practice, and failure practice. We need to clearly, I agree with you, we need to transparent share to avoid repeat the mistake. And this is fundamental. We start this conversation today to organize a series of conversations with the Regent Park community. And we are here for 5 years, 10 years, hopefully develop something valuable, not only for the world, for Canada, some things for Regent Park community and for Toronto as well. I believe we are able to bring some of the best practices from the global stage to the Toronto community housing, or some of the best practice. We are partnering with ISOCAR, with ICLEI, UCLG, Harvard University, other universities around the world. And we plan to share some of the best practices from different countries to share, because I think Regent Park is an ongoing project, and also is a neighborhood. It's alive. We can have more interaction with the others. And our plan is try to introduce Regent Park as a pilot project. On the other hand, try to share all the practices about Regent Park. We started to create kind of fundamental research about past. It's really important to share what's happened during the last decades in Regent Park as a practice. I don't want to say good practice, bad practice, as a practice, as a real practice, and share with the globe and with other community. And also try to, as it's regarding community empowerment, we have valuable experience in the world. In UN Habitat, we access lots of best practices and best practice award and local leadership. Also, in other international organizations, we are able to simply link and bring this experience and work with Tridel, with Daniel about this to enrich this best practices, and try to extend it to the other region in Canada, in North America, and rest of the world. I'm really happy to start this conversation today, and I believe with your great support and collaboration, we will have some things, we can make some things together. No doubt. We are here, and no rush. Step by step, we can build and enrich and provide something valuable. Thank you so much.
Okay, so with that, let's move to the discussion. And everyone is welcome to share their feedback, their ideas or thoughts. Maybe we'll spend, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. I do see a hand raised in the back. So let's go there. And Ilda, I'll ask you to watch the hand raise as well, and just let us know. Perhaps you want to come up to the front and share some remarks and share your name as well.
I want to thank you all for having me here today, and I want to give a special thank you to Rabia for inviting me out today, because I never even knew about this building, like this pavilion, until today. Just show of hands, who has been in Regent Park since the 1950s here? 1960s? Show of hands? 1970s? I was a youth. Actually, let me take you back a little bit. My father came here in the 1960s from Antigua to London, Ontario, and made his way here to Toronto with $100 in his pocket. The next day, he got a job at the City of Toronto, cleaning the streets of Regent Park and Cabbagetown. My mother came in the 70s, worked at the Royal York Hotel, and then I was born and she quit. And then I had two brothers. So I've been here, I'm 47 years old today, and I have been here a very, very, very long time. I work for the government now, Ontario Works. I lived in Toronto Community Housing at Parliament and Gerrard, which Daniels is building. It was 295 Gerrard Street East for almost 40 years, 35 years plus. I'm now a homeowner, and my mortgage is paid off. Thank you. We never told anybody back then where we grew up. I told people when I was going to school at Spruce Court, Queen Alexander, Broadview and Queen, Riverdale Collegiate, and Ryerson University, now known as TMU, I told them I lived in Cabbagetown. Nobody came into Regent Park in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. People like me were considered dangerous. Hoodie, Black, I fit the description. So here we are today talking about revitalization. How can we be more resilient, inclusive, sustainable? I am here as a living witness and proof that we, the children, my father came in his 20s, my mother came in her 20s. We, the children, we were not the problem. The system was the problem. The government, the media, sorry, Peter, Toronto Community Housing, the system, institutional, I'm gonna label it, white supremacist system, kept people like myself and other people that look like me and the Indigenous community down for a very long time. When I was growing up, it was what I saw was Black people like myself from the Caribbean and some from the African communities, the Asian community, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Caucasians who came from the war and were housed in the what we call the red brick buildings, the strongest buildings you will ever build compared to what is built today. And I want to say that I am so honored and grateful that I lived in those times when I grew up. We were community. We didn't have all this social media. We had a telephone and we knew where everybody was. We didn't have all this communication problems. Like everybody got things done. We didn't have problems with access to space because nobody came here. The space was ours. And so all of these, there's some positive things that are happening today. The buildings are nice, they're clean. When I was growing up, we were moved in by TCHC, one of the biggest drug busts in the 80s at the time. And we had cops, drug dealers knocking on our door looking for, I'm gonna name him, Davey. We were not the drug dealers. So when I tried to purchase my home 12 years ago, when RBC looked at the M5A address at 295 Gerrard Street East, apartment 206, it was a waived address. Waived meaning dangerous. apartment building, 295 Girard Street East, Parliament and Girard, where Daniels is currently building, which I'm actually purchasing. My mother and I are collaborating and we're purchasing where we grew up 35 years ago. Dangerous. And I had to say, oh, excuse me, RBC representative, let me tell you the story. It wasn't my family, it wasn't my single mother with their 3 children moving in there. There was a big drug bust. It was all over city TV. There was no CP24 back then. And I said, it was a big drug bust and his name was Davy. And he said, okay, no problem, no problem. So I was able to purchase. But I do have to speak truth. You've got to share the truth, as Marlena said. Anti-Black racism or racism hit me and my mother in the face like crazy when we tried to purchase. I was not able to get in at 25 Cole, which was one of the first bills in Regent Park in the first phase, because I fit the description of a drug dealer. I had money saved in my bank account, and the person from TCHC said, where did you get the down payment for the condo? I said, first of all, I work at Surrey Place Center. I work with autistic children. I've got a good paying job, and I'm actually working for the government right now. That's how I have a good paying. That's why I have a down payment in my account. I'm not a drug dealer. I am not a lazy person. I'm a good saver. I learned from my mother. So couldn't get in, couldn't purchase the first year. 2-bedroom, den, parking, storage was going back then for $329,900. Couldn't get in, my mama couldn't get in. The only way we could get in, we were forced to split up. So I live in a townhouse and my mom lives at 260 Sackville. When my mom purchased 12 years ago, we all know Zellers, right? Zellers closed down, shut. Oh my goodness, I was covering 2 mortgages on my government City of Toronto job. Very, very challenging. We had help going through the RBC training. TCHC trained us on what it looks like to purchase and own a home. But once we moved in, the support was null and void. So when the toilet started to make a little funny sound, it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fix a toilet? My mom used to do that, or TCHC used to fix a toilet or fix the fridge. It's like, ooh, but my mom knows how to fix a toilet because she used to fix a toilet at TCHC when TCHC never came and showed up. But my mom would share a different story. My mom would share a rosy picture of those days, you know? And if you weren't here in the 60s or in the 70s, and there are people that are still here, the Indigenous community that I went to school with, they're still here in this community, the Nova Scotian Black individuals, they are still here, but they don't even know about this. So there's a saying, if you don't know your history, you don't know where you're going. And I'm gonna tell you something about Northside Regent Park where I live and Southside Regent Park. Northside was known for the drug trafficking. Big time, I had the CP24 lens at my bedroom window. Southside was known for the gun violence. So we were told as young children, don't cross over to the South Side. You don't tell children not to do something, they're gonna do it. All right, and so now when we're talking about rezoning and building.
Starting from where? From this street, south?
Dundas divides Regent Park from north and south, right? North side for life, by the way. I'm still on north side, by the way, facing north. So when we talk about rezoning and building, and I'm not an urban planner, by the way, I'm just speaking from experience. When we talk about building high rises, like right up into the sky, the reason why I think, and this is just in my opinion, why we had less gun violence, actually, I don't even remember hearing any gun shooting back in my day, is because the buildings were like 3-story, 6-story townhomes. All the high rises were on the south side, Belshaw Place, where all the gun violence was happening. But now I'm hearing on Oak Street, which has a history of crime, it has a history of disease and illness. And we still today, if you look just in the past 10 years or 5 years, a lot of gun violence on Oak Street. It has a history dating back to the 50s of like lots of criminal activity going on there. So when we build high rises well, now the community is not just poor people, it's a mixture. There's a potential for more crime when you build up so high and bringing in a lot of poor people. I'm just speaking from what I've seen in the past. And I could be totally wrong. If there might be urban planners or people who have studied this. I haven't studied it, just going by experience. So I think we need to be very, very careful when we look at how how we're building these buildings, who we're bringing into the community. And even when we're housing people in apartment units that are empty, what happened in those apartment units before they were empty? Was there drug violence? Was there a drug bust? Because it could potentially affect your chances of owning, chances of good. It could mess up a whole lot of things, and it almost messed me up. But thank God, like I work for the government. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But I do want to say we cannot forget our history. We've got to include our history. The indigenous people are still here. And I think it's a shame they don't even know about this. I will let them know. And I'm still a little bit confused, like about what this is. And I would like to learn more, like offline. And I'm sorry that I'm taking up so much space, but I think it's important for you to know the truth. I had a great time growing up here. I loved those buildings, those red brick buildings. When the police were after people, they didn't know, we were in the jungle. You go in one end and you're coming out on a whole nother street. They could not find people. So I personally loved it. I loved biking around. There was a lot of green space. Now I see concrete jungle. And I think it's thinking about sustainability, and I think we're on dangerous territory with all this concrete that we're building here. It's dangerous, actually. And I just want to leave it at that. I do want to say thank you for being here today. And I have hope. I really do have hope in Regent Park. But I think we just can't forget the history and can't forget the people who are still here. My mom is in her home. She's 70 years old. She's got a different lens than me, a more polite one. But we were the ones targeted by the police 40 years ago, right? And I won't go into that today because then I'll have to take a little bit of a healing breath. But once again, I want to say thank you. And I look forward to seeing where we go from here. Regent Park, the journey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for sharing that experience as well. Is there anybody else who would like to share some remarks? Yes, please go ahead. Come up to the, yes, because we got the microphone here. And share your name as well, so we have it documented.
My name is Ahmed. I'm an urban planner at Toronto Community Housing. I also worked on the community benefits working group. I'm the one that led that group, and I worked with everybody. Yeah, you too. So it was really good. In that, I learned a lot of the stuff that Rabia was saying, and forgot the name. That's everybody what they felt, to be honest with you. It wasn't just people having these thoughts. The whole community wants to figure out how we can create something that evolved from the other stages. So it's not like, because Regent Park historically was built like in the 1920s or something as a replacement for slums. And throughout the years, it's always been changing. And me and Peter talk about this. The next change, I feel like, is going to be not just building housing, but it has to be based in economics. How can we get our residents to not just live here, but to also be able to make money and survive here, right? Be real residents here, because nobody wants to drive to Mississauga for a job. Same way the people in Mississauga don't want to drive here for a job. They want to figure out how we can create this community. And it's very important. I feel like the next stage is the economic part and the use of space part. Because if we're going to create space that our residents cannot access, then it's not, what's the point? You understand? There's all these brand new condos, beautiful spaces. Even this right here is my first time coming here, right? And that is to tell you why are we going to use the UN and show the world, oh my God, we're doing all this stuff, but the residents can't even come here, right? So we have to actually take a step forward and try to do this. So I'm working with Peter now, and it's not going to be easy, the use of space, but I feel like we can create new policies based on the new spaces that we're building and try to figure things out. But I'm from Jane and Finch too. I came here from Somalia. My dad first came here, he was going to the University of Windsor. We first came to Jane and Finch, it was the same thing. But although we came from Africa and the things were not as great as here, there's also things here that wasn't there. You understand? So basically, I would walk outside with my sisters and I'm afraid something might happen to them. Whereas in Africa, it's more of a village where I'm not afraid of those things. So not even just a village, it's like, it's a community, right? So that's what I want to get back to, things like that, a community and trying to help each other. So hopefully.
Thank you. I just want to clarify one thing is this is your space. So everybody here, all the Regent Park community are more than welcome to use this space. We encourage meetings, we encourage gatherings, workshops, committees. I think Rabia, you approached me about having your women's group come here and have meetings. Everybody is welcome to use this space and I highly encourage it. And we would love to have that. Waleed, yeah, please go ahead.
I can second what Alex just said. I know when we were trying to meet as a food insecurity coalition, Alex and folks who were very generous with this space. So thank you, Alex. But Ahmed, I just want to say what you said, my friend, was so critical. And the reason why, you know, we want to have this conversation about informing our evaluations and benchmark, right? The indicators is because we know we're going to be coming up with a community benefits agreement, right? We're going to have hard targets. We're going to have very specific targets. And this project is not going to be successful. This revitalization is not going to be successful if we are not able to actually track and monitor over the next couple of years where we're at when it comes to those specific deliverables, so those specific commitments. And one of the most important thing is prepping or preparing residents in our community to access good jobs. We don't want precarious jobs. We want good jobs in our community so folks can live and work in the community they love, right? So that's such an important piece of this work that we're going to be doing. And also, I think it's important for us to think about not just how we prepare residents for good jobs, but also an entrepreneurship and all that amazing stuff. But also, how do we challenge policymakers to start thinking about investments that create those good jobs in our community, right? So that it's sustainable in the long term as well, right? So for example, if there are future projects, how do we make sure that residents have that capacity to be able to grow or expand, right? Beyond just their good jobs. Home ownership, rent to own is what you hear a lot of residents talk about because they understand the only way to transfer wealth is through home ownership. That's how economic system is built, right? So how do we enable residents to have financial literacy, but also how does our government have our back to eliminate regulations that make it difficult for people to access home ownership and address the big elephant in the room, anti-Black racism, inclusion, white supremacy. A lot of people talked about those issues. Those are systemic. It's not you or me can do it, but collectively working together, we can make this happen, right? So those are very critical points that I want people to think about because our future is actually dependent on us working together to make this happen. Thank you.
Well said, Waleed. Perhaps we'll take maybe one or two more questions, or not questions, but comments. Is there anybody online who would like to share some remarks? I welcome you now to come online. You'll have to raise your hand or perhaps you can type in chat. Ilda, if you can check the chat, I see 2 unanswered comments there. And we can unmute you. Yeah. No comments? Perhaps, Sharma, I think that's your screen is, yeah. Would you like to take the floor? Perhaps unmute her, Hilda. Ask to unmute. Yeah.
Hi, could you hear me? Awesome. So I'm born and raised in North York. So I'm kind of borderline North York and Toronto. And I will say that more information is needed. I think because I went to University of Toronto downtown. And I'll say exploring and just through social experiences, I would maybe have a little bit more of a broader social circle if I wasn't so scared in certain parts of the city, and maybe a little bit more knowledgeable. And I think that there's that disconnect. And so here I am in my mid-30s back in Toronto. So anything that I can do to help, because I am a licensed realtor. And the first story that I heard, I joined late because I was working, but that happens all the time, all over the city, from the east to the west end, where the bank or someone behind a screen that might be outside of the GTA is going to decline someone. So I just think we need more information about that, but I just thought we should share it. And something close to my heart is the youth sports. So anything that we can do to give them an outlet, because that saved me. One of the reasons that I got into University of Toronto and was a varsity athlete was because of my extracurricular activities. And growing up borderline North York and Scarborough, you saw a lot of people that didn't make it through the school system. So it's getting that outlet to go through that. So thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing the information.
I'm gonna take it. Okay, so there we go. So there is a question online. This is your Instagram? Yeah? Oh, that's kind of cool. Well, leave it. Okay, so we have an awesome meeting. How would I join an advocate or be part of the team to put in ideas? So as it was mentioned before, Reza had mentioned, this is a series of conversations. This is the very beginning, and a lot of you are saying, you need more information, you want more information. How can you be involved? And I think just continuing to be engaged in our work, we're active on social media, staying in tune with our events are all kind of great ways. Of course, we want to bring you in as well. Marlene, you?
Never, there's a little bit of room.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, just stay aware of our work. We're pulling in more and more people all the time. And the purpose of this meeting is to pull you in. We want to pull you in, and we want to keep you. We don't want you to kind of leave our network, and that's what we do here. Rabia is kind of probably the newest person to our family, and now I expect everybody else here to also be new members of our family. We often say UEF family. So that's kind of how you can be involved. Marlene, you'd like to share something?
Just one small comment. One of the things that makes Regent Park really unique is that we're a mixed community. We have TCHC on one hand and regular buildings on the other. Okay. And nobody knew how that was going to work out. One of the things that, how do you measure this? How do you measure success in terms of revitalization? And one of the things that those who began all this process said that this is the reason we need a social development plan. Because if we're going to be successful, one of the things that's going to happen is that we have social cohesion. Social cohesion. Otherwise, we're going to end up as, that two solitudes. And before the pandemic, we were really working at it. Certainly those of us in RPNA, this was a main focus for us. This is a community association of trying to bring our two communities together. We have a lot more in common than we have apart. Somebody said to me early on in the game, nobody checks your bank account when you're having tea together. That was profound. It's more profound than it sounds. Nobody really cares. We have a lot of things in common. We all strive for the very same things. We want good things for our kids. You get involved and you see that it's harder for some people than others, and you jump in. You try to make it better. But we can't, but we need to be mindful. And we believe, certainly in RPNA, that this is a really main focus. We have to get people back together. Over the pandemic, it fell apart. And looking for those community spaces, that's one of the big things of having large places where everybody comes, everybody gets together, places you break bread together, because this is what you do. When when you get together, you share, you have parties, you eat together. That's what every family does. This is what every community does. So I don't know how you measure that, except that people are comfortable with each other. I think it's really important that market buildings share their space. We know that TCH shares their space, but market buildings have not been encouraged. The only reason my building shares this space is because I'm one of those people, on these various places. So I open my space, and I'm on my board. It helps if you're on your board. So, things like that, we have to really care and get those spaces open so that all people can get together. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Marlene. And I do see a question from Denise from Center for Social Innovation, right? Yeah, Center for Social Innovation. How do we join the work of the pavilion with other work happening in the community? My answer to that, I think one is we have the 100+ program. We're looking for urban innovations and transformations on sustainable urban development. Denise, I think you're someone I'm going to follow up with you specifically, because I think there's a lot of initiatives that you likely are aware of, either from your work or from the community, that we can bring in as Made in Canada, Made in Regent Park, urban innovations and transformations for sustainable urban development. This program is up and running. Everything's ready to go. Check us out online. It's on our website. And Denise, I will follow up with you directly. And then, of course, looking at global pilots, right? I think we need to align our agendas and look at that deeper, and that's going to require some more conversation as we move forward. I'll do one last call for if anybody wants to say anything.
Congratulations.
Miguel, please.
Hello, my name is Miguel. I am a member of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. I'm a TCSC resident, and I am an activist. One of the things I do for activism is bring forward the issues of disabilities. One of those elephants in the room. We rarely talk about it. Mental health. In this community, Regent Park, 40% of people live in poverty. And many of them have disabilities, physical or invisible. I have both, as you can see. I have mental and I have physical disabilities. I have lived in this community for 12 years, and I haven't had a job. Why? Because nobody's giving me an opportunity to have a living. Just like the brother says, community benefits. I want to be able to go to the market and buy me a sirloin steak, and I want to grab to the liquor store across the street, get me a bottle of wine, so I can enjoy the luxury of people living across the street. But I can't. I had to eat food from the food bank, from the soup kitchens. That's the reality of Regent Park. And we had to showcase this to the world that this is our truth. We're still living in poverty. We're still stuck in poverty. And the only way we can move forward is generating jobs, sustainable jobs for the future, with money in the bank that can sustain jobs for people like myself. Because we deserve to have a job. I used to have a job before. I used to work for the Toronto Zoo. In 2009, I lost my job. I lost my house, I lost my family, I lost my children, I lost everything. I became homeless with my dog feeders. Thanks God, an indigenous woman, social worker, housing worker, saw me and had compassion and offered me a great opportunity to move to TCAC. Not in Regent Park, but outside in Etobicoke North. How do I come back here? It's a story for another day. But you know what? I love this community. I want to make sure that those people who have disabilities have an opportunity for those jobs, because phases 1, 2, and 3 has been a total disaster for inclusion of people with disabilities. That has been none on record. We need to do better. We need to change that so that this community is a model for the world. Thank you.
Okay, so I think with that, I'm going to do one last look of the room and online audience. I don't see anything in chat or hands raised.
Say congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Alex, in the new role.
Thank you, Wally. Thank you. Yes, I'm excited. I'm very excited. Thank you for that, Wally. Yep.
I want to say thank you to the Gales. I've learned a lot from him in this community. I think from tackling anti-Black racism, it was in a group, most of them are unions, the labor unions. So we have these good paying jobs with the government, such as yourself, Miguel, and myself. We go through anti-Black racism, not just from our government here, but also from our union men, right? So even though we get a good paying job, we are still struggling within the system to keep those good paying jobs. And let's be honest, we don't have good paying jobs and we can't sustain them, and the poverty continues. So thank you, Miguel, for sharing your story.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes, anti-Black racism from multiple perspectives, from multiple sides even. So with that, yeah, okay, we got a hand raised. If you can unmute, Ilda.
Hello, good evening, everybody. This is Ali Fatuma speaking. Can everybody hear me? So like I'm new to the community. I've been here in THC for the last 2 years. And the last 11 years that I would hear as Regent Park wasn't a safe place. Now it's a safe place for everybody. They can walk in anytime at night. I can sit at the park until 2 a.m. and I'll be very safe. So security has been amended. But one thing that I want to look at is kids or maybe people who did crimes back maybe in the days, like some of them can't get jobs or can't do anything because the system won't let them work or do anything because of the mistakes maybe they did as young adults or young children or adolescent kids. So I think the system sometimes will mess you up, not to prove yourself and give you another chance to prove yourself back into the community. So I think we should always encourage our youth to stay away from bad friends or bad people, to engage them in messing up with their future, because the Canadian system or the government won't let you have a bright future when you have a criminal record. It's like you will mentally shut down, you will lose everything of your life. So I come from Africa, in Uganda, that I'm Somali origin, whereby in Africa, we don't have those criminal checks or anything. Like everybody will work in the community and every human being does a mistake. Like nobody is perfect. But the Canadian system will hold that mistake for you. Like, you know, you can't do anything. So imagine somebody has done a mistake when he was a teenager. He's an adult, he wants to prove himself, but that mistake is gonna haunt him for the rest of his life. So I think we need to engage more in our youth that are growing up, our teenagers, to teach them what the future holds for them tomorrow if they mess up in these countries. So that's all I want to add in the block.
Awesome. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we will close this meeting. Just prior to that, there is some food available, vegetables and veggie and fruit platter. And then as well, we also have some questions on the back. There's coffee over there as well. We also have some questions on the windows. If you want to share your thoughts and ideas, please feel free to write them down. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for everyone on the line. And we look forward to the next conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.